Brando, welcome back to T-Town. I hope you're doing well, man.
I am, Ryan. Thank you. And let me echo your sentiments about, the entire Gulf Coast region, certainly the city of New Orleans. And I think a lot of places, probably even further inland along the I-20 corridor might even be impacted. I know my daughter now lives in Jackson and in Ridgeland, just outside Jackson, and they're expecting, 15 inches of rain, perhaps.
Wow.
On the eastern side of the eye of the storm as it moves inland. So it's a slow-moving track, apparently, and that's going to make it tough. Here in northwest Louisiana, where I live in Shreveport, we're on the western side, so it won't be nearly as bad. More than likely, just a rain event for us. But yeah, the Mississippi's never been this high when something quite like this has come through. So Godspeed to all of them.
Oh, there's 100%, no doubt. Tim Brando. Tim, do you miss radio? You miss being
No.
Really?
No. If you mean,
but you did a great job. I mean, your show was so much fun. I mean, I know that you involve your producers, and I follow some of those guys. They actually work with the same ownership that I work with down in Shreveport there. But you don't miss it at all?
No, not the radio talk show. I did it for a little over 14 and a half years. And I didn't really want to do it when I was asked to do it. But Sporting News actually, at that time, the same Sporting News that has a website and the longtime magazine, American Magazine and Sports Business Journal, which is still based in Charlotte, North Carolina, they were in the radio business and came after me with the idea, the notion of doing a national show back in 2001. And I just thought with my schedule being the way it was, and in those days I was doing a lot more even in the spring and summer for CBS. I did some tennis here and there. I did some golf, and I just didn't see how I could balance the two. And to Sporting News' credit, they just kept after me, and they said, no, we'll take care of that. No, we'll take care of that. And they basically wouldn't let me say no. And I went ahead and started doing it. And shortly after, maybe about 4 years into it, they decided to get out of the business. They sold their radio entity to Yahoo, and my show sort of moved around from a distribution standpoint. And it's hard to get legs with a show when you're doing something nationally, and there are time changes and distribution changes. But for a lot of different reasons, my show did manage to stay afloat until such time as CBS came with the idea of putting it on their cable network, which is still a very fledgling network that doesn't have as many homes as it really should have at this stage. But they wanted to have a substantive daily show with news because they didn't have a news gathering arm. They had nothing like a sports center or anything like that to put on. So I was really the only live show they had. The rest of the time they were running, soccer replays and bowling and, America's strongmen replays from Brent Musburger days at CBS. So I said yes to it, and that gave my show a big boom in terms of its audience and the platform that it had. And I'm still very, very happy that we did it for the time that we did it. But once it went away and I left CBS, there was really no reason for me to continue to do it, because when you're calling games as I am, when I was going up to New York to do the studio for CBS on Saturdays, it was almost like one hand washed the other. It was good for my business. And I would do my show for Mickey Mantle's in New York or on Fridays, and have some of the guys that were going to be on my show Saturday come on. Not Mickey Mantle's is closed now, so you can't even go to Mickey's anymore when you go to New York. But it was understandable and fun to do. But when I started at Fox, and I was trying to balance a schedule of football games, and in my first year I did a ton of games on Thursdays as well as Saturdays, it just became very, very difficult, because to meet with coaches, to meet with coordinators, and then to balance getting up in the mornings and doing a full-blown show, and I did that for two and a half years, it was tough. And I had no time for family, and I was approaching 60 at that time. I'm 63 now, so I'm doing exactly what I want to do. Guesting on your show, coming on radio shows and being a guest is fine. But I don't think people understand how difficult it is to prepare and do your own show on a daily basis. There's a lot of work involved. Maybe fans don't get that. Maybe they don't understand that. But trust me, you know it, and all the people that do it at a national level know it as well. And I was burning too many candles, and now I'm really very, very satisfied to just go out there and call games. And if somebody asks me to come on and give it a few opinions, I'll do it.
Well, but I go back to something because you believed in collegiate sports, and there's an old country song, and I believe it was Barbara Mandrell. It could have been Lynn Anderson, but it was a song. It was talking about I was country when country wasn't cool. But you look back at your track record, you pushed for the game of college football and athletics and the attention, and it wasn't cool. It wasn't because it was not given the attention. And now we arrived in 2019 where it's almost a 12-month sport. It's close to filling in the gap.
Yeah, that's true, Ryan, to a point. But I just tweeted about this a short time before you and I came on. If not for niche networks, cable networks now that have conferences' names on it, like the Big Ten Network and like the SEC Network, you wouldn't be hearing a thing about college football right now on daytime cable television. I mean, you wouldn't. They're still talking NBA free agency. And that's true on ESPN. It's true on Fox. Why we do it on Fox, I have no idea. But they clearly are being told by their focus groups that this is what the young 18 to 35-year-old male is discussing at water coolers on a national level. I don't agree with it, but it's happening. And I think that for those that are governing college athletics, specifically since the college football playoff era got underway and we've been stuck with these same 3 or 4 teams every year, I think that the national belief on college football is why bother worrying about it? We already know who's going to be in the playoff every year. And they're missing out because college football, as you know, has got a lot of parity. It's got a lot of stories. Somebody tweeted me back and said, well, the free agency thing, college football, there's nothing going on. Really? There's nothing going on? Check the transfer portal. Check out how many, in Tuscaloosa, people are thinking a little bit about what Jalen might do in Oklahoma. Well, in Georgia, they're thinking about Jacob Eason. I can go on and on about how many, because he's gone to Washington now. There are about 35 to 40, names of quarterbacks that were playing or at least were somewhat prominent at different schools that are going to be starting at quarterback among the Division I schools this year. And yet there's very little being discussed about it. So, I believe that college football should be talked about a great deal more at the national level. I want it to have a platform, a bigger platform. And to some extent, and I'm guessing part of what we're going to discuss here will be my conversation with Feinbaum yesterday, and that's fine. I'll tell you, one of the reasons why I do my top 10 where I do it before Media Days gets underway is because I think college football needs to get more attention. And these are the dog days of summer, and this is the time when you can have some fun and project ahead and talk about the what ifs and what could be's and all those things. That's really the point. It's not about stirring any pot. It's just about getting attention back to college football. And that's the reason I've always had that list. It's the reason I do a 6-pack of picks for college football every week. Even though I no longer have a radio show, I still use my social networking platforms for that. But you're right. I do believe college football deserves more. And while in your world, in the circle that you're in, you're feeling it, I'm here to tell you, if you look at it from the outside in, from 30,000 feet where I am, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, my God, why haven't we been talking more about college football as opposed to, 4 teams in the NBA, and the NBA season just ended. It's over. It's done. Now we know where Kawhi Leonard's going. Okay, we know now. Can we move on?
Absolutely.
Can we get to the next sport?
Oh, 100%.
That's my
yes.
point of view, and I'll never understand it. And I used to fight this battle at ESPN when I worked in Bristol. I have been an open critic about it. I've even criticized my own network because I believe that, we all live in glass houses, okay? And why we don't even be on Fox, and yet we're talking about it all the time. I don't get it. So we're all, to me, we all have our beliefs, and my strong belief is that intercollegiate athletics as a whole it never gets a fair shake. Only at this time of year, the only way you're going to get an opportunity to be on the mainstream media outlets is if you have scandal. And for it to take scandal for college sports to get attention, that's a joke. And I'm going to be the one that points that out.
Tim Brando joining us right now. Tim, but don't you think coaches could help us a little bit, though? I mean, because like we go through
yeah. Well, coaches could help, and so could the system. You know, and that's the alarming part of this, Ryan. You know, we were sold a bill of goods, and I bought it, by the way. I had the World in Crisis countdown, if you recall. I was throwing a party when we went to 4 teams because we were told this was going to grant greater access to all of college football to be a part of the postseason process. It's not done that. It's minimized the bowl system, and it has only made the haves stronger and the have-nots further down the rung. And I'm afraid that we're going to start losing Division I programs soon, which means fewer scholarship opportunities for athletes if they're not going to one of the Power 5 schools. And yeah, the coaches can help too. There's no doubt. Greater access is needed, and shutting down access is the worst possible thing that you can do. But I think it goes beyond the coaches, though. It goes up to the coaches' bosses, the people that are governing the game. You know, no one's saying that, you know, suddenly we need to give. And I get this from some fans all the time. Oh, you want to expand to 8 because, you know, you just want to let the lesser lights in. You want to turn it into the NFL. No, that's not it at all. I want to expand the horizon of interest in college football. It's always going to be big in Tuscaloosa. It's always going to be big in State College, Pennsylvania. It'll always be big in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Columbus, Ohio. We need to make it bigger west of the Mississippi, and we need to involve schools in all parts of the universe, and our universe, the United States, in the process. College football shuts itself down and is made to look like a regional sport when they're only allowing the chosen few with the biggest brand names to be part of its process. There are a lot of great stories in the college game, Ryan. A lot of teams coming a long way.
Sure.
You know, Iowa State, I think, has Brock Purdy's going to be one of the great quarterbacks in the country. Most people don't even know who Brock Purdy is. Okay, Oregon has, I believe, a team that could challenge out of the Pac-12 if Justin Herbert stays healthy. But does anyone really know that Oregon's that good? Not really. Not unless you're a big college football fan and you read Phil Steele. That's what we have to do. We have to make sure people know where the real stories are in college football, and they're more than just scandalous. And that's on the committee, and that's on the people that are governing these 5 conferences, because until we do that, we're not going to have the interest in the sport. Therefore, the ratings are going to continue to flatline, as they already have, and we're not going to be growing what was at one time the second most popular sport in America. And I still believe that it is. Only the NFL is more popular than college. But if we're still talking about the NBA and we're 6 Saturdays from the start of the season, there's a problem. We don't need to rely on media days to ignite the national narrative.
Wow. Tim Brando sitting at the podium and delivering a very, very strong message. It's loud and heard here in Tuscaloosa. Timmy, let's go back here just for a couple of minutes. Tim Brando joining us from Fox Sports. Let me go back to just for a couple of minutes. I want to get your thoughts on what happened in Santa Clara, because we've spent 200 days talking about what if. How'd you see it? What went wrong?
Well, an offense that couldn't get it done in the red zone. That was clearly the biggest problem for Alabama. And a defense that very simply could not handle an offense with an arm like that of Trevor Lawrence and some playmakers that Clemson had that no one else in the SEC did. Now, I believe that Georgia has the wherewithal and the capability to compete with and beat Alabama, but to this point, the issue for Georgia against Alabama is between the ears. You know, they've outplayed them for 3.5 quarters, but haven't been able to finish the deal. Clemson's well beyond that. They knew when they lost the first time to Alabama in the national championship that they had the ability and the wherewithal to beat them. They just didn't get it done. The second time they played, they did. Now, there was no doubt that after they lost Deshaun Watson, it took them a while to realize that Bryant was not going to be the guy that can handle Alabama in that meeting in New Orleans, and they paid a price for that. But give Dabo Swinney a lot of credit for identifying that he had to make the change at quarterback when he did during last season. You know, Clemson was never that impressive, even once Lawrence took over in the ACC, because they didn't have to be. That league was really weak. I think it's the fifth, the number 5 conference among the Power Fives. And by the way, if the American Athletic Conference were part of the Power Six, I'm not sure I wouldn't rank them ahead of the ACC right now. I mean, that league is really down. And I think the AAC with Memphis and Houston challenging UCF, and I don't know that USF is going to be that bad. That's a pretty good league, and with a lot of really good coaches in it. But the reality is, Alabama, I think, had a false sense of security. And I picked them to win the whole thing last year. I didn't hear much from Alabama fans when I picked them. I hear only from them when I pick them second. When I pick them number 1, I don't hear very much. But, you know, they had a false sense of security based on blowing people out in the SEC. And Clemson is a different animal. They've been there, done that, and there was no fear factor. I think there has been a mental fear within some of the teams in the SEC about what to expect from Nick Saban's defenses. And Clemson is like, what's to worry about? Let's just play our game. Let's do what we do. Now, it helps to have an offensive line that can give your quarterback some time, and Clemson did that. And they've had some losses up there. But, you know, Georgia was clearly as talented, if not more. They just couldn't pull it off.
You're 100%. I talk about it all the time. Alabama wins a lot of games by getting off the bus with that script A, and teams get intimidated.
You know, there was a time when we used to say, especially I think it was true in basketball, you know, during the heyday of Georgetown in the 80s when Ewing was playing, Villanova lost to them 3 times, but they had no fear. So when they played them 2 times, but then when they played them a 3rd time in the national championship, they played the perfect game and won. Familiarity should breed contempt, not fear. And I think in the case of Alabama in the SEC, they've been sort of like the Tiger Woods in his heyday. Familiarity hasn't bred contempt; it's bred fear. And you know, I didn't see it in Clemson at all, but I definitely saw it in Georgia, both in an SEC title game and in a national championship game. Their most the most recent matchups that they've had. But the last time that there was a Clemson or Alabama was when Miles really had it going at LSU in that period around 2009 and 10 and 11. And of course, after that 21-0 shellacking in the rematch, LSU lost its mojo. Now they've got a mental problem with Alabama from an offensive standpoint. Now, I don't know that they can get past it this year. They may, because they're really, really good this season. I think Joe Burrow has a chance to have an All-American type of year. But unfortunately for LSU, the game is in T-Town. But LSU's got the same mental block about Alabama that Georgia does right now.
Timmy, I want to run through this top 5 for just a couple of minutes, and I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of pushing you a little bit late.
No. Go ahead. Take your time.
Yeah, because I my producer, I'm borrowing Peter from to pay Paul, so I'm going to borrow from the next segment. You know about this when you get in these college football conversations. So my producer's looking at me, and I'm going, I'll pay you back, I promise. I'm not going to skip a break. But you got Oklahoma, Georgia. You're going to believe in the Michigan Wolverines there in Ann Arbor. You got Alabama 2, Clemson number 1. Let's talk about 1 and 2. Is it good for college football that 1 and 2 is pretty much consistent across whether it's Phil Steele, Athlon, Lindy, Street and Smith, Alabama 1, Clemson 1, rotate them. However, it seems like those 2 teams are at the top of almost everybody's top 10.
Yeah, and it's not good for college football. No, it's great to have dominating teams and to have a storyline of a potential rubber match. You know, if I think the thing that particularly disturbs Alabama fans about my pick is that would mean Dabo's and program has beaten Alabama 3 of the last 4 years if it carries through. I really don't care about those things when I'm looking at my projections. I'm having fun, and I'm looking at schedules, and I'm seeing who has the best chance to get where. That's one of the reasons why I have Michigan at 3, is because I think Michigan's got a very favorable schedule And I think with Gaddis coming in, ironically from Alabama, to run the offense, and Harbaugh giving Shea Patterson really the keys to the car that he didn't have before, I think that, Michigan has a chance to overtake Ohio State. That will be in transition, and Ohio State's got a tougher road schedule. Clemson's got a cakewalk, with the exception of playing A&M non-conference. I think they'll handle A&M just as they did last year. Now, that was a game they could have lost. Call or two goes this way or that way, and A&M might have pulled off a tremendous upset. But they don't have to worry any in the ACC. Alabama's non-conference schedule is pathetic, putrid.
Embarrassing.
Name whatever. Give me another word.
It's embarrassing.
I mean, it's awful. So you don't get better by playing these teams. And when you get into conference play, the teams they're playing crossover with in the East are nothing. It's just going to be an Alabama blowout on CBS at 3:30 most afternoons Eastern time. That's what it's going to be. They'll get LSU, and for Alabama's sake, let's hope LSU's undefeated. I think LSU does have a chance to be undefeated, provided they win at Texas, and that's one of the reasons I have them ranked ahead of the Longhorns, is because I think they'll beat them head to head in Austin. But you won't get challenged until late in the year against LSU. Then you get the break before the SEC title game. When you play that weak a schedule, it does not get you ready for a matchup with an offense that's got as much firepower as Clemson's, in my view. And when you look at the rest of that group of teams, that cobble of teams, Oklahoma, in my opinion, will split with Texas again, just as they did a year ago. But here's the issue. Texas will have lost to LSU, in my opinion, so I couldn't put them in. And Oklahoma, in my view, could lose to Iowa State. They've got to go and play a really good Iowa State team that I've got on the fringe of the top 10. They're one of my first three teams out. Iowa State, Matt Campbell's done an incredible job, has a future Heisman candidate in Brock Purdy at quarterback. Very similar to Tebow, except he's right-handed. But everything else he does, even wears Tebow's number. He's outstanding. These are teams and that I think are on the cusp of being really, really good. But with the schedule being as unbalanced as it is everywhere, Ryan, and that's the biggest issue. 70% of what goes into my work, and I don't just pick these teams randomly. I look at schedules. I'm making, granted, it's an opinion, but it's one based on knowledge. I'm looking at schedules and rosters, okay? And in this day of punditry with recruiting, everyone wants to go with, we were top 5 recruiting, top 2, top 1. Top. We were 1A, 1B. Everybody thinks it's about the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's, but it's also about the schedules. The schedule is the primary factor, and just about everybody on my list in the top 10, with the exception of Oregon out of the Pac-12, every team on my list has a favorable road schedule within their conference.
But, Tim, let me ask you this, because I've asked this question a ton to Greg Byrne and to previous folks. When you talk about the schedule, they tell me that it's difficult for some of these non-conference opponents. Like, they have trouble, and I know you can look ahead 2027 and 2028.
That's all public relations.
Right,
you know that.
Right, but
it's all PR.
Yeah, but what they're doing is they're signing up because they're banking on Nick Saban not being here. But do you believe that it's a hard time that Alabama's picking up an opponent and they're calling USC or whoever and they're saying, hey, you want to play us neutral field? My understanding is they get a lot of turndowns.
I've known Greg Byrne forever. I knew his dad before I knew Greg. He was, I won't say in diapers, but I've known him a long time. And I have great respect for him. Tremendous respect. I think he's one of the top young athletic directors in the country, without a doubt. And so I know his family. I have great respect for his professionalism. But I'm here to tell you that is just a canned response that could easily be rectified if only the system were changed. And the system hasn't changed. And why would it change it if you're Alabama or any SEC team for that matter? Why schools are scheduling tough non-conference games with this format makes no sense. It's easy to say that it's difficult when no one can really challenge you. And I've never been an athletic director, nor have you. But I'm here to tell you, if the system didn't allow for these made-for-TV money games in places like Atlanta and Dallas and Tampa and wherever else they have them the opening week, I think we'd see something a little bit different, don't you? I mean, I think we would. So the system is built for the haves. The haves are printing money with the system being the way it is. The intimidation factor on an Alabama fan to show up even when you're playing whoever the hell you're playing out of the FCS in late November is still going to be there no matter what. And, oh, yeah, those loudmouth broadcasters are just trying to call attention to themselves when they say what they say, like I say all the time. It's just political drivel. That's all it is. Very easily, this could be taken care of if you really wanted to give your fan base a better game, a better show to see at home. You don't have to do that anymore. And by the way, if the seats aren't filled, it doesn't matter. HDTV and ESPN is paying you just enough to take care of whatever seats aren't filled at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So I'm not going to say that he's lying. I'm just going to say he's conveniently not telling you all of the truth.
All right.
How about that?
Final question. You've got Clemson winning the national title. Why is it that you believe in Clemson, and when you look at Alabama, you don't think that they can get back to be in the top of college football?
Well, being in the game again certainly says a lot. But to an Alabama fan,
not in Tuscaloosa, Timmy.
Yeah, right. I mean, again,
not in T-Town.
Yeah,
14-1's a failure here in T-Town.
This is part of the. It's almost like Nick Saban has taken not only the work that Mr. Elko, his psychological guru, does with his team, and has spread it through the entire college football community in the state of Alabama, in the sense that, yeah, we lost 44-16, but we saw this coming even weeks ahead. We had kind of lost our leadership. We lost our way. We that. It had nothing to do with the fact that Trevor Lawrence lit your ass up. No.
Well,
or that Clemson might have
listen,
been
Timmy,
a hell of a lot.
I say that
might have been a hell of a lot better.
Hey.
Okay, that's the world you're living in there, and I'm saying to you, that's just at some point you lose, and you lose for a reason. The other team is better than you, and what Dabo Swinney has done that Nick Saban has been unable to do is retain stability within his staff. Now, there's something to be said for that. There should at least be a yellow flag, if not a red flag, a yellow flag in Nick's mind. Oh, okay, all right, what do I need to do to hold on to some of these guys a little bit longer so I'm not having to be so concerned about the mental aspect of every individual on my team? Delegating authority is part of being a head coach. And right now, Dabo Swinney has done a better job of delegating his authority on his staff than Nick Saban has. Otherwise, we wouldn't see an entire staff change over almost as it did last year for Alabama. So that is a clear advantage Clemson has, within the confines of its program. And then you have Trevor Lawrence, who's better than Tua Tagovailoa right now. He just is. That's not to say Tua's not great. He's just not as good as Trevor Lawrence. Talk to most NFL scouts, they tell you the same thing. Right now on the draft list, Lawrence would be ahead of Tua.
Tim Brando, you can send wonderful messages via Twitter at Tim Brando. You can find him there. Tim Brando, I appreciate you being on in Tuscaloosa. Hopefully we can catch up again soon. I appreciate the extra time today in T-Town.
You got it, Ryan. Anytime, and my best wishes to everyone there in Tuscaloosa.